Imagine being sucked at lightning speed into a 30-inch wide, oil-filled pipeline deep beneath the ocean. 5 workers found themselves ensnared in just such a terrifying nightmare. Yet, only one of them survived to return and recount their bone-chilling tale to the world. Additionally, a GoPro camera attached to one of the divers' suits captured the exact moment of the accident. The horrific footage recorded by this camera is so terrifying that it will leave you utterly shaken. On February 25, 2022, off the northern coast of South America, in a coastal town named Point Pierre, 5 workers from the LMCS company, Faisal Kuban, Kazim Ali Jr., Chris Nagasar, Yusuf Henry, and Christopher Boudrum were performing maintenance work inside a pipeline. This pipeline belonged to the Paria Fuel Company, a state-owned oil enterprise located in Trinidad and Tobago. The team was working on a section of the pipeline that had been out of service for a considerable period. It was a U-shaped, 30-inch wide pipe running along the seabed. The pipeline was designed to transport crude oil from Berth 5 to Berth 6, the site of an oil refinery. On that particular day, the workers' task was to enter the interior of the pipeline and isolate it from the surrounding seawater in order to carry out repairs. To accomplish this, they positioned a specialized habitat bell over the pipeline. This system utilized air pressure to displace the seawater, thereby creating a dry internal workspace where the workers could stand and perform their duties. The habitat machine itself was an 8-by-8-foot cubicle structure, which was lowered and seated directly atop the pipeline. Inside the pipe, this process effectively created a hyperbaric chamber, a dry environment where the workers could stand upright, access their tools, and execute the necessary repairs with ease. One specific objective of this operation was to retrieve an inflatable plug located at Berth 6, which had been inserted into the pipeline 2 weeks prior. This inflatable plug served as an airtight barrier designed to prevent hydrocarbons and crude oil from leaking out of the pipeline. To remove this plug, Kazim Ali, the worker positioned above, passed a wrench to his colleagues, intending to use it to loosen the valve and extract the plug. However, the moment the valve was opened with the wrench, a sudden, shocking force was unleashed that dragged all 5 of them into the pipe within a matter of seconds. Unbeknownst to them, the inflatable plug they were attempting to remove was holding back a void filled with air in the confined spaces beneath it. This was because the pipe itself contained only a minimal amount of residual oil. The instant they loosened the plug, the high-pressure air from the upper habitat rushed violently toward the low-pressure zone within the pipe below. Simultaneously, seawater began to surge inward with tremendous velocity. The result was the formation of a terrifying, tornado-like vortex of water that sucked the workers and their equipment deep inside. The accident was so sudden and unexpected that none of them could comprehend what force had pulled them into the pipe. They could only realize in retrospect just how fortunate they had been. The pipe featured a slight curve further down, where they managed to find a small pocket of space sufficient for breathing. Footage captured by the GoPro cameras attached to the divers' suits shows the moments immediately preceding the accident. Thereafter, the screen goes completely black. Trapped inside the pipe, they could only call out each other's names, desperately asking if everyone was all right. The violent suction generated by the combined pressure of crude oil, water, and air persisted for nearly 90 seconds. Eventually, the water and air pressures stabilized, leaving them trapped within the pipeline at a specific point where they were barely able to breathe. Of the group, only one survived to tell the tale. In a subsequent interview, he recounted the harrowing details of this terrifying ordeal. "It happened so fast, you couldn't react. I didn't even remember actually getting pulled in the pipe. I just remember going whoosh through the pipe at unbelievable speed. Every time you try to open your eyes, it's burning, pitch black. You can't see anything. Your throat is burning, your ears are ringing, your body hurts. And at that point, I told myself I was going to die." Now, their true battle for survival had just begun, for they were lost inside a 1,200-foot-long pipe, a structure equivalent in size to 4 football fields. Despite being injured, disoriented, and gripped by terror, they continued to speak to one another, offering mutual comfort. Chris believed that their heads had been thrust into the pipe first. Consequently, he reasoned that they would have to crawl backward to exit it. However, Kazim, Yusuf, and Faisal were certain that it was their feet that entered first. Chris pressed his feet firmly against Kazim's shoulders. He then instructed the others to place their feet on the shoulders of the person in front of them as well. Since Faisal was at the very bottom of the chain, he was instructed to push everyone upward. In this manner, forming a human chain, they began to inch their way slowly towards berth 6. The problem, however, was that the pipeline was filled with thick, slippery crude oil. After nearly an hour of struggle, they had managed to advance only a few inches. With broken limbs, the constant burning sensation of crude oil stinging their eyes and noses, and the oppressive, pitch-black darkness surrounding them, the place took on a terrifying aspect, one even more horrific than hell itself. After several more hours of arduous effort, yet another grave danger loomed before them. As they continued to inch forward, the level of seawater within the pipe began to rise steadily. They strained to keep their heads lifted above the water. However, the man at the front of the line noticed that there remained only about 6 inches in which to breathe. The 2 workers at the very back of the line were the most severely injured. They were struggling desperately to draw breath. Chris and Kazim Ali were leading the entire team from the front. They decided to hold their breath and push forward in the hope of finding another air pocket, a chance they were determined to take. Chris and Kazim made a solemn promise to their companions. Come what may, they would find a way to escape to the outside world, and they would discover a means to rescue the rest of their comrades as well. Adhering to their plan, the 2 men kept their heads lifted as high as possible and pressed onward. Then, holding their breath, they swam through the water, propelling themselves as far forward as their strength would allow. After swimming a considerable distance, they both reached a second air pocket. As it turned out, due to the curvature of the pipe, small pockets of trapped air existed in various sections along its length. They had nearly reached the riser pipe, the very pipe that would allow them to make their escape to the outside world. Fortunately, they stumbled upon 2 oxygen tanks along the way, which they carried with them into the pipe, as if these were precisely what they needed to facilitate their exit. Both men began utilizing the oxygen tanks to aid their forward progress. However, one of the workers, a man named Kazim, was unable to advance quickly due to his severe injuries. Consequently, they decided that Chris alone would use the 2 tanks to find the way out and then summon a rescue team to save the 4 men still trapped inside. Chris, who was leading the way, held his oxygen tank close to his chest and slowly pressed forward. However, suddenly a new fear rooted in his mind. What if this wasn't berth 6, but actually berth 5? After all, berth 5 also had an inflatable plug blocking it. After swimming for nearly 50 feet, he reached the surface. He then called upon his creator and with a final surge of strength pushed himself upward. And finally, Chris was able to breathe the open air once again. Upon reaching berth 6, Chris began banging furiously against the pipe. With whatever energy he had left, he began to shout at the top of his lungs. A crew member stationed on the ship nearby heard his cries, and Chris was safely rescued with the aid of a chain. Once safe beneath the open sky, Chris informed them that 4 divers were still trapped alive in various air pockets beneath the pipe, and that they were in critical condition. Chris attempted to describe the 4 divers and their exact locations in as much detail as possible. Regrettably, however, the LMCS company crew simply could not bring themselves to believe his story. The company personnel assumed that the pipeline was completely filled with oil, and whatever air remained in the oxygen tanks would last for only a few hours. At most, yet following the crew's persistent pleas, divers were finally deployed into the sea to tap on the pipe at various points. In response, the trapped workers inside began tapping back, attempting to signal their location. Upon hearing the sound of tapping on the pipe from the outside, a glimmer of hope ignited within the trapped workers. They waited patiently from within. Now, perhaps professional divers will arrive to conduct the rescue using their specialized equipment. They wait for hours inside the pipe to carry out the rescue operation. They counted every second. Maybe this time they would see a rope or a light. But alas, neither did they see any light, nor was an oxygen tank sent from outside. Slowly, time passed, and the 4 workers were still waiting, injured and hungry. Due to oil fumes, rising seawater levels, and carbon dioxide, they lost the battle for their lives. In fact, they were stuck in such a place that the LMCS company could not understand how to rescue them. The company did not want to put the rest of the drivers in danger while rescuing them. According to some, they were already dead inside, and the sound of something else was reflecting to them from inside. A few days after this incident, their bodies were recovered, but the autopsy results could not pinpoint the exact time they died. According to one report, they were alive until Sunday. According to another report, one of them was alive until Monday. That means the company could have rescued them if it had tried. Everything inside me hoping a rescue was going on. Nobody was making an attempt to rescue me.